Welcome back. You're tuned into Inspired Afternoons, and now it's time for our educational insight segment. And yes, in my intro, I said part of the reason I'm feeling anxious, I think, from Friday uh, is regarding the delayed opening of schools as announced by the Minister of Education, and then as well as the minister's appeal to delay the opening of independent schools as well. Some independent schools have already commenced with classes last Wednesday. So there's lots of uncertainty and confusion as to what to do the road ahead. Many children are at independent schools, even faith-based schools, such as our Islamic schools, and everybody seems to be confused in terms of the way forward and actually how to proceed forward. So I'm joined now by somebody who has been in discussion with various stakeholders and the department, as well as somebody who's really, really visionary and can provide answers and who's on the ground as well. And that is brother Ebrahim Ansur, and he's currently the executive headmaster of Orient Islamic School, as well as the Secretary General National Alliance of Independent Schools Association, also the Secretary of the Association of Muslim Schools South Africa. Alhamdulillah, somebody who uses his time productively, because just being a headmaster is a full-time job, and then he's here holds executive positions in many forums and capacities. So alhamdulillah, one day we're just going to get him on time management as well, and how to be as productive as brother Ebrahim. But let's welcome him now to Educational Insights on Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum, brother Ebrahim, and welcome to Educational Insights on Salam Media.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for the very warm introduction. The one way to manage your time is to have a very understanding wife. So let's
Absolutely.
start.
Absolutely. Like they say, behind every successful man is that very, very strong female. And I'm
Patient one too.
and patient. And I'm pleased you're acknowledging her at the outset as well. So, brother Ebrahim, everybody, parents, learners, educators, various stakeholders in the educational institutions are feeling very uncertain. So, what is the way forward, especially for those that are at independent schools and faith-based schools, because there seem to be no clear direction. There was an appeal to delay the opening, but not a clear directive. Is when I last checked on the wires and on the online platforms, nothing has been said in terms of clear directive. So, what is the way forward?
All right. Let me just clarify. Last Wednesday, the Department of Basic Education, headed by the Director General, Mr. Mweli, met with stakeholders, including our National Alliance of Independent Schools Association, which comprises 9 associations representing about 1,400 schools in the country. And of course, AMS is part of NAISA. And the Director General made it very clear at that stage that he was still in a process of consultation with stakeholders, but he conveyed the recommendation of the National Coronavirus Command Council, which advises the president, about the fact that it was their view that schools should delay their reopening until the 15th of February. And the reason for that is the alarming number of COVID-19 infections. At that time, this was last Wednesday, and of course we have seen a slight drop, but we are very concerned about the very high number of deaths that have been reported, as well as a high number of infections. And the rationale was that they were expecting that the COVID-19 peak would be felt, especially in provinces such as Gauteng, in the next week or two, when people return from holiday, when children were out getting their shopping done for the back to school, etc., etc. It was purely a scientific decision based on securing the health of not only children and staff, but the parent community and the community as a whole. So at that stage, it was an appeal to us, and as responsible people who are responsible to advise our schools, the National Alliance decided to advise all our schools that they should, in fact, close if they had opened, and those that hadn't opened, we had asked them to reopen on the 15th of February, which is a fortnight or so away. Now, the latest I can tell you is that we have been invited to a meeting this evening by the Department of Basic Education, and I am absolutely sure that that meeting is going to talk about perhaps the department gazetting and making official in written form the fact that schools are only expected to open on the 15th. I'm expecting that that's what's going to happen, because at the moment we don't have anything in writing. But if the minister, deputy minister, goes on national television and announces on national television that schools will only reopen, the public schools and all schools will only reopen on the 15th of February, I think that the country should in fact take that as official. So what has happened, unfortunately, as I said, because we don't have anything in writing, some schools opened, and I was just received a communication now from the Gauteng Education Department in which it is stated that the minister, Lesufi, actually visited some of these schools, and he was very pleased to note that the schools had originally decided to open, but then had a rethink and then notified their children that they are going to go online, and they're only opening on the 15th of February. That statement also said that the Kuro schools, which had opened, had also given an undertaking that they were going to close and reopen on the 15th. Now, this is according to the press statement issued by the Gauteng Education Department. So the long and the short of it is, I think there is broad consensus in the independent school sector that for the safety of our children, it is best that we delay the reopening of our schools until the 15th of February.
Okay. Brother Ebrahim, now what I need to understand is delay the physical reopening, but can then blended learning take place? Because most independent schools have infrastructure in place to carry on online. So the educators have been doing it last year. The school has the resources, most of these schools, and the infrastructure, and it has worked because that is what had happened last year. So are they dealing the complete reopening, or school will commence maybe in the next week or so, but then learners will return to school? So dealing the attendance, and can the curriculum start? Can we commence with teaching and learning via an alternate platform as the one that we were deploying last year?
The short answer to that is absolutely yes. NISA sent out a communique to all our schools last week, in fact on Saturday morning, in which we clarified that those schools that are ready to start online learning may do so with immediate effect. Now, obviously, there are some technical issues that have to be sorted out. For example, my school, obviously, we have a large number of learners, and there are lots of new learners. So by the time you get the new learners on board, it does take a bit of time. But any school which is ready to launch online teaching programs is welcome to do so. And of course, I think it's a sensible thing to do to make sure that the children do not lose out unnecessarily on the curriculum.
Even if from somebody who is in the education field, and that I would think, even if you start a revision program just to revise last year, so we can build upon, especially I'm thinking of like a grade 9 to matrix, to start a revision program, well, even for the foundation phase, just to revise all your literacy, numeracy, and life skill ways. Those that are going into grade 4, you're going to be introduced subjects now. So maybe just get every educator of a subject just via online to introduce what is a subject, what does the subject entail, and things like that. So maybe just for an orientation, so to speak, so that when schools commence physically, when learners come, you can get into the learning content, teaching and learning.
Yeah, Sister Mariam, I think from our perspective, I think the more important issue is to connect with our children. I think it's so important that in the midst of this pandemic, we are aware that there is a great deal of trauma out in our communities. And I think the first point of contact should be between teacher and child on a personal level. In other words, the teachers have to be concerned about the welfare of the children they are teaching, because many of them have lost near and dear ones, they have lost relatives, they've lost parents. It's possible that even their financial position has been badly affected by the pandemic. So the first thing that I have advised our teachers to do is communicate, get in touch with the children, find out how they are, find out how their parents are doing. Are they do they need assistance in terms of their own social and the psychological welfare, etc. And then, of course, you can go on to the school matters, such as you have pointed out, I think, which is a very sensible way of revising last year's work, setting out what this year is going to be. One must understand that it's very difficult. An online system is not as easy as people think it is. You can't expect a child to be in front of a screen for the duration, for example, of a school day. So one has to be selective, not only in the amount of time that a child spends in front of the screen, but also in terms of the methodology, what you expect the child to learn. You can't have a talking head as we have at the moment. Obviously, you have to supplement it with audiovisual material and other material. So there's a lot of planning that has to go in before you can have an effective online program. And I think by now, most schools have learned. They have learned from last year's mistakes. And inshallah, I'm sure that this year's online program, and I'm making sincere dua that it's not going to be for too long. Let's hope that the peak comes and goes and that we are in a position to have our children back at school. So I agree entirely that we can use the online program very effectively to revise last year's work and to introduce the new curriculum to our children.
Okay, Brother Ibrahim, you touched on something important which I'd like to address now. Uh, Fees, as you've correctly mentioned, many families' economic status has changed due to the circumstances. Families losing loved ones. Many families, the breadwinners, have lost their livelihood. Companies have closed down, being a difficult time, and now. It's not going to be coming to the schools physically. Well, you said that decision will be taken now. You'll get greater clarity. But what happens, let's say, regarding January fees? Have yourself as a body made any recommendation to any of the individual schools in terms of maybe a discount, even if it's a 10-20% discount for January? Has that come in terms of the fees? What is your advice regarding the fees, or do you encourage families to come forward and communicate with the schools on an individual case approach, the school management?
Sister Mariam, this is a very difficult question. In this very straitened financial circumstances that we find ourselves in, parents have to make a choice. I think, let me start now. I'm speaking purely on behalf of the Association of Muslim Schools, and I can't even speak for every single school because each school has its own unique circumstances. But I think I need to educate the community, especially the Muslim community who send their children to Muslim schools, that Muslim independent schools. The fact of the matter is that these schools have been subsidizing the cost of education for many years. We are reliant on, firstly, our teachers. Our teachers, I stand to be corrected, but I know, I mean, I've been involved with the Association of Muslim Schools for the last 2 decades or more. I doubt very much whether there's a single Muslim independent school in the country that offers salary benefits and perks which are equivalent to the state. You'll have a teacher in a state school across the road from an independent school without wanting to cast any aspersions on those teachers, but I can tell you that they don't obviously put in the kind of all-round holistic education of our children, including akhlaq, Islamiyat, etc., which our children get from our teachers. And they earn a salary. I will be surprised if it's our staff get 75% or less, maybe 50% of what the state salaries teachers are paid. So number one, our teachers are subsidizing our schools. Secondly, the boards themselves go out of their way to get donations to keep the schools running. They get donations from well-wishers. There's a lot of zakat that is used to pay for the fees of disadvantaged families. I know that many schools have a policy that when children of disadvantaged communities enter their schools, their fees are paid in full. So the bottom line is that our schools already discount their fees to our parents as it is. In this climate, last year, the teachers had to take a huge knock. Many schools were forced to pay the teachers 50% or 75% of their salaries for 3 or 4 or 5 months. So my appeal to parents is that I know it is difficult. Number one, if you can't afford to send the child to an independent school, you can't afford to pay the fees, then I think you need to look at a different option. If parents are experiencing difficulties, they need to communicate with the school. But to ask for discounts when schools, independent schools, especially our schools, have already taken a knock in 2020 is asking for a bit much. And I'm talking about my own particular school, because we've had to carry parents, we've given them discounts, but we will never be able to sustain this. We can't keep paying our teachers 50% of what they are worth and expect the kind of effort. So my appeal to parents is make every effort to pay the fees in full. Schools would have lost 2 weeks perhaps, start on the 15th of February, invariably they're going to make up that time. So the children are not going to be shortchanged. I can tell you definitely that we will shorten our holidays, we'll do whatever it takes to make sure that the children get their full years of tuition. Allah willing, inshallah, right? If nothing goes wrong, if we don't have further disasters or a third or a fourth wave. So my message to the community is that as hard as it may be, remember that the schools are an amanat. They have been contributing over the years. They have been subsidizing the education of our children. Now is the time for the community to come to their support and to make sure that they are sustained during this difficult time.
Jazakallah, Brother Ebrahim, for your insight, your advice, your sage advice indeed, and the comments. And please do keep us posted with regard to that meeting. What I'll do is I'll get one of our producers to actually contact you in terms of what was said at that meeting you're going to have tomorrow, so that we can inform all our parents accordingly. And from all of us here at Educational Insights on Salam Media, we wish everybody, every school community, all the best, a safe resumption for 2021, and inshallah may it be a fruitful year of teaching and learning, inshallah, and all the best to everybody involved in the education sector. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. It was an absolute pleasure talking to you. And my best wishes also, may Allah make it easy for everyone involved in the education sector. They make such a huge contribution to the life of our community, inshallah.
You go well. And that was Brother Ebrahim Ansur, and he is the executive principal of Orient College, as well as he sits on the board of EMS, Secretary General, as well as the Association of Independent Schools. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move on, and I have we have an educator, a senior educator. Incidentally, she is also at the Independent Islamic School, a math educator on the line, educator Sadia Makda, and I have a pupil who is going to be undertaking her matric this year, and that is Laaiqah Loonat, and she's currently at Al Aqsa, while waiting now to attend classes at Al Aqsa. So let me welcome Sadia. Assalamu alaikum, Sadia, and welcome to Educational Insights.
Walaikum salam, Mariam. Jazakallah for having me on your show.
And assalamu alaikum, welcome Laaiqah.
Walaikum salam, Jazakallah for having me.
So, Sister Sadia, you caught, I think, quite a bit of what Executive Principal Brother Ebrahim was speaking. And yesterday when you and I chatting, you spoke to me because you're one of those educators that last year when online was an option, you were actually part of that control or experimental group at your school that had commenced at the very outside with online lessons. So tell me, how's your experience, and are you now in a better space to prepare this year to go maybe for 2 or 3 weeks in terms of online learning, to commence with that?
Yes, definitely. So we started off at JMS not having any foothold on an online system. So everything was new to us. Setting up a classroom on an online platform was new to us. And like everybody else, we were navigating through very uncharted waters. It was unprecedented times, and we didn't have a blueprint to follow last year. So as you were learning and adapting, you had to give off from yourself as an educator. And then we had expectations from our learners as well. We expected them to rise to the challenge. And then there was load shedding, and there were a whole lot of issues that came about as a result of this online teaching. But alhamdulillah, we ended the year off on a successful note, and the online did play its part. This year, we have the blueprint. So I think the mindset has to shift with the parents, with the educators, and with the children as well. We can't now say we're surviving and we're adapting. I think this year we have started off on an online basis until the 15th of February, inshallah. And I think this year's mindset is now, how do we thrive? Because we don't know what the year holds. We don't know, as your previous guests were saying, there might be a third or fourth wave. At least this online platform allows learning to go on. And I think that's something that parents and children who send their kids to schools that allow this online platform, we need to have a gratefulness for it. I'm grateful for the opportunity to teach, that even if I benefit half of the students, at least it's half that are educated this year. So we have started this online platform, and I think we're all a bit settled because we know what to expect. The children know what to expect. And obviously, they do need encouragement. So from the teacher's perspective, you've got to encourage them. You've got to motivate them. You've got to make them want to learn over this platform. And I think that's where the success lies.
You know what? You are that educator that Principal Ebrahim was speaking about. I can hear the dedication and passion in your voice. And also in terms of, I loved what you said now, that we've already tested the system, the online system, under these circumstances was working well. You had communication between the learner and yourself. Yes, it's not going to it will never replicate the in-classroom physical contact situation. But yes, we've pivoted, we can adapt, and teaching and learning, effective teaching and learning can take place. And you said something very vital. We need to now take this technology and not only use it, but we need to thrive. So and I love what you said, that you need to encourage the children, all your learners, to say, these are our constraints now. And now we're not just going through the motions where we're just putting out this. No, you've got to take this platform, make it your own, and you need to take these circumstances and you need to thrive. And we've been waxing lyrical about the fourth industrial revolution and how to prepare. And it's come now. COVID was a catalyst that accelerated this process. And as you've said, we need to take this and now we need to run with it. And we have to make sure that we have such alternates.
100%. And you've got to put, as a parent, as an educator, you've got to put a positive spin on the online for your child. You have to show them this is what you can achieve. It has to now become intrinsic motivation, where before it was extrinsic. It was, if you're going to be successful at the end of the year, I'm going to buy you a PS5. Whereas now we actually shifting the mindset of children, where it's intrinsic motivation. I have to do this, otherwise I'm going to be the one left behind. And if you look at it from my perspective, online learning had a lot of positives. It taught resilience, it taught adaptability, it taught independence, responsibility, appreciation. I think the bonds and the relationship that I built with the children on the online platform at certain points far supersede what I would have did in a normal classroom environment. So holistically, you have to look at the glass half full. You cannot always look at it half empty, because we don't know what the future holds.
Sister Laaiqah, let me bring you in. Do you concur? So we have the educator who said that on her side, these were all the positives of this in terms of resilience, in terms of a better interaction and understanding. Do you feel that having studied online for some part last year, do you concur with educator Sadia Makda?
I do, to an extent where we are more accustomed to contact learning. Last year, during that time, we didn't have the contact learning, which was a disadvantage to us. Is at that moment, we really couldn't pick up our hands and say, Appa, we don't understand. We had to send the message. Those messages got lost in other messages, and sometimes it took a while for the teacher to get to it, where the teacher used to carry on because it was a bit too much questions, as the groups were so full and everyone had concerns or misunderstandings.
But did you then, because remember that was on a trial stages, but do you find that as the year progressed and as you continued with the online platform, did your particular school, in terms of your educator and the classroom, your classmates, did you try and put in structures in place to overcome those challenges?
We did. We used to, if we didn't get through on the group, we used to private message our teachers, and they were very willing to help us. Our teachers were very dedicated to get us the education we needed, and also to help us in any way they could. But there's only so far you can go through a phone than that in person.
And that we all in agreement with that, but instead of having no teaching and learning occurring or taking place, this is an alternate platform, so at least some aspects can be covered. Sister Laaiqah, you are now in matric, and the matrics 2020 had a difficult year, and it seems that this delay now is also a strain on the matric class of 2021. But how do you feel about the prospect of embracing online learning until it is safe to return back to physical classrooms?
I feel positive about it, as we are not, we don't have to repeat a year. We can still continue learning. We can still achieve more academically instead of being put at a standstill where we have to stop and wait. We can do more.
Mm-hmm. So, Sister Laaiqah, we caught up with time. As I'd like to wish yourself and as well as all matrics, the class of 2021, on behalf of Educational Insights here on Salam Media, all the best. May you have a fruitful, productive year, and may the Almighty ease all challenges for the year and grant you all ease and comfort to your studies, and may you reap what you sow, and wishing everybody success for the year. And Sadia, final concluding words of encouragement for all our learners for heading into 2021.
Having heard the student that's online with you, I just want to say to her and every matriculant and every child out there who's navigating through this online system, my advice to you is that persevere, push through it. Because at the end of the day, however challenging it is, repeating the year is going to be more challenging. It's a known fact that when children are not stimulated or they're left unstimulated for a period of time, their cognitive skills are not developed. And when they have these unused skills, it becomes harder to get back in. So grab the opportunities, however small it may be, from your educators that are trying their best under the circumstances to navigate you and themselves through these systems. So that would be my advice. Be grateful for this online platform and just embrace it, because we don't know how long it's here to stay.
Jazakallah for that sage and wise words indeed. Looking forward to it, and inshallah, hopefully we can chat again sometime in the future, Sadia, in terms of advice for our learners. It's been an absolute pleasure. May you all be under the mercy and protection of the Almighty, and also wishing all the educators all the best for the academic year 2021. From all of us here at Educational Insights, only on Salam Media. Assalamu alaikum.
Alaikum salam.
We're going to go for a short break, and then we're going to provide an alternate for parents who are caught up in times of uncertainty and maybe also due to financial situations, looking at educational alternates. So we're going to be discussing homeschooling as an alternate. All